Hello everyone, Jolene here from A Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all doing well. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading. I like to read diverse books and I highlight Canadian literature. If you are new, thank you so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. It is getting closer to fall, my favorite time of the year. And today I am going to be taking a look at the list that CBC put out. The CBC Books put out a list that includes 45 must-read Canadian nonfiction books that are for fall. So I did a similar video about 50 fiction books for fall. I will leave a link to that below if you want to check it out, if you haven't seen it already. And you can see what is on that list too. There's some great books there. There are a lot of topics covered with these nonfiction books. So hopefully this list will inspire you to pick something up that you might be interested in, especially if you're looking for something for Nonfiction November. These would be really good to try for that. So I'm going to start with essay collections, and then there's several sports books. There's also memoir and biographies. There's several books that I'm putting on, I'm guessing I'm going to call the category on my radar. And then I will share my most anticipated nonfiction books from the list. I will also put a link to the article below. So let's start by taking a look at the books that are essay collections. And first up is Queers at the Table. This is edited by Alex D. Ketchum, who is an assistant professor at McGill University and based in Montreal. It's also edited by Megan J. Elias, who is an associate professor at Boston University, and they live in Brooklyn. So I love New York, as you know. So Queers at the Table is an anthology of essays, comics, and recipes. And all of these explore the many nourishing ways that queerness shapes food production, which I think is kind of interesting and not something I've necessarily thought about before, and also restaurant culture. So it celebrates how food empowers, transforms, and brings together queer and trans communities. My guess is around food, which is so cool. So next is the 2025 Massey Lectures. And this is Universal by Alex Neve, who is a human rights lawyer, and he lives in Ottawa. And I'm actually really interested in this because it fits perfectly with the classes that I teach. So these Massey Lectures look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it challenges us to reclaim the promise that human rights belong to everyone, everywhere. So yeah, I think that this is especially important in our world today. Next is Of Floating Isles. This is a collection of essays by Kawika Guillermo, which is the pen name of BC author Chris Patterson. This explores the roles that video games play in our lives, and the book reframes gamers as members of a community instead of isolated individuals. Guillermo expands on the thesis that video games have the ability to offer guidance in times of loss and hardship, but also the power to reveal the oppressive mechanisms of our real world. So that would be very interesting for anybody who likes video games. Next is In the Field by Sadiqa de Meijer, who is a writer born in Amsterdam and currently lives in Kingston, Ontario. This is a collection of essays that explores profound questions. What meaning does a birthplace hold? What draws us to connect with a work of art? How do we honor the remains of the dead? This is going to be available on October the 15th. The next essay collection is Shelter in Text. This is by Myra Bloom, who is an associate professor at York University. And it's also by Kasia van Schaik, who is an assistant professor at the University of New Brunswick. This is a collection of academic essays and creative nonfiction that explores the relationships between shelter and narrative. There's some pretty interesting things here. It looks at issues of care, disability, and housing inequality, and it considers decolonial perspectives on land and space. So yeah, it covers quite a few important issues, and this will be available on October the 7th. This next book isn't essays, but it is a short story collection, and it's called Better This Year. It is edited by J.J. Lee, who is a Canadian writer, and this just sounds like a fun collection which tells true holiday mishap stories that are funny and heartfelt. And it seems that this is part of a series with another volume, and the other volume is called Better Next Year. This will be available on October 28th, so it might be a good one to pick up for the holiday season if you're into reading that kind of thing. It kind of gives me Stuart McLean vibes, if you are familiar with The Vinyl Cafe. So yeah, it seems like it's along those lines. Sticking with the humorous theme, Sorry Not Sorry by comedian Mark Critch, who is from St. John's, Newfoundland. This is a collection of humorous essays that explore a new wave of Canadian patriotism, national identity, and Canada's future. This will be available on November the 25th. Moving on to the next category, which is sports books. Coming out on October the 1st is Habs Nation. This is by Brendan Kelly, who is based in Montreal. And this tells the history of the Montreal Canadiens. So if you're a fan, this would be great. It also highlights how the team is not just about hockey. The book explores the influence that the Habs have had on the province of Quebec, and Brendan Kelly talks with some of the players as well as journalists, politicians, and even filmmakers about the special bond that fans have with the team. The next sports book is Just Call Me Andi, and this is by Andria Petrillo, who lives in Toronto, Ontario. Andria Petrillo shares the challenges that she has had to face as a trailblazer in sports broadcasting, especially like at a time when a woman offering opinions on sports was still a novelty. I would say that it still is. She reflects on the lessons learned and the obstacles that she has had to overcome on her path to making history time and time again, really. She was the first woman to win a Canadian Screen Award for Best Sports Host. She was also the first to join the Hockey Night in Canada in-studio broadcast team. So yeah, this book will be available on October the 21st. Next is We Breed Lions by Rich Westhead, who is a TSN investigative reporter. In this book, he unpacks the story that he first broke about the sexual assault allegations against 5 players from Canada's World Juniors team, that now all in the NHL, and stemming from an incident that happened in June of 2018. So though the players were acquitted in July of 2025, Westhead's investigation goes beyond the courtroom, exposing the toxic culture within hockey, amplifying the voices of survivors, and holding the sport's gatekeepers to account. So this will be available on November the 4th. Also available on November the 4th, and the last book in the sports book section or category, is We the Raptors by Eric Smith and Andrew Bricker. Eric Smith has been covering the Raptors for Sportsnet for nearly 30 years. Andrew Bricker is an associate professor of English literature at Ghent University in Belgium. We the Raptors, 30 players, 30 stories, 30 years, explores how, following the NBA expansion, the Toronto basketball team had long been unheralded and basically ignored until they became one of, the winningest, it says the winningest teams in the league. Through interviews with 30 former and current players for the Raptors, the book offers a rare view of the NBA through the eyes of those who made it in the sport. The next category is Memoirs and Biographies, and first up is a debut, Worldly Girls by Tamara Jong, who is of Chinese and European ancestry. I've been seeing this everywhere. She was born in Montreal and currently lives in Guelph, Ontario. And in this memoir, Tamara Jong reflects on growing up with an emotionally distant father and an alcoholic mother, and how she once believed that the Jehovah's Witness faith would actually protect her from pain, including infertility and mental health struggles. It was only after rejecting that belief system that she began her journey toward healing. Next up is the memoir Nowhere Girl by Carla Ciccone, who is a Toronto-based writer. In this book, she shares how she was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 39 and how it changed everything. So for most of her life, she carried the weight of being misunderstood. But what she once believed were personal feelings were in fact symptoms of an undiagnosed disorder. Next is Red Pockets by Alice Mah, who was born in Smithers, BC, and now lives in Glasgow. In this book, Alice Mah returns to her ancestral rice villages in South China, where she confronts the loss of her ancestors' resting places, wrestles with rising eco-anxiety, and reflects on what it means to call different countries and landscapes home. This one sounds very interesting to me, and I do like the theme of home, as many of you know. This next book will be out this week on September the 23rd. It's The Silence of Falling Snow by Kristjana Gunnars, who is an Icelandic-Canadian writer. This book shares the experience of the author when she accompanied her husband to his home in Oslo to die. She began to lose her sense of self, and in this book she weaves together that experience with reflections on Buddhism and art making, offering a poignant meditation on grief and the process of finding meaning in loss. Many of you already know that I like reading books about this topic, about grief. So I'm sure that I will be checking this one out at some point. Also coming out on September 23rd is Motherness, and this is a memoir by Julie M. Green, who lives in Kingston, Ontario. Almost 10 years after learning that her son has autism, she is also diagnosed, and it sheds light on a lifetime of feeling othered and being misunderstood, similar to a previous book. And this memoir traces her journey from childhood to motherhood, as she must advocate for her young son while also navigating her own struggles. Next is Postman by Alex Manley, who is a non-binary writer based in Montreal. In this memoir, they share their lifelong feelings of being apart and alone and othered. The memoir explores their experience of navigating masculinity, from growing up steeped in hockey culture to working for a men's website to coming to terms with going bald as a non-binary person. This will be published on September the 30th. Being published on October 14th is John Horgan in his own words, and this is by John Horgan with Rod Mickelberg. John Horgan was the 36th Premier of British Columbia, and he passed away in 2024 at the age of 65. This memoir traces his journey from a self-proclaimed wayward jock to a career in Canadian politics. The book reflects on key moments from his time in office, including his government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, efforts towards reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and his personal battle with cancer. If you're into political books, then this might be a good choice for you. Next is a book by someone who is very recognizable. This is Future Boy by Michael J. Fox and Nell Fortenberry. Most likely, you all know who Michael J. Fox is. He was born in Edmonton and became a very beloved actor on Family Ties and in the films Back to the Future. Those are probably his biggest roles. Nell Fortenberry has worked with Michael J. Fox for 30 years, maybe even more. So in this memoir, Michael J. Fox reflects on the early years of his career and offers an inside look at what it was like to play two iconic roles simultaneously. The book features behind-the-scenes stories and interviews with various cast and crew from both of the projects. This will be available on October the 14th. Up next is Hidden Flowers by Kiko Honda, who is a Vancouver-based writer. And in this memoir, she reflects on the many facets of her identity as an aging Japanese Canadian woman, becoming an empty nester, embracing her creativity as an artist, and finding purpose as a community organizer. This will be published on October 21st. On October 28th, The Last Heart Beating by Natalia Neidhart will be published. And Natalia Neidhart is a professional wrestler, originally from here in Calgary. This family is very well known here. She now lives in Tampa, Florida. And in this memoir, she reflects on growing up in a legendary pro wrestling family and shares her journey to become the first and only woman in the family to enter the ring and carve out her own legacy at the highest level in the sport. So I actually just realized that this could have actually gone into the category into the sports category, but it's fitting here as well. Next is one of my most anticipated memoirs, but I did keep it in the memoir category, but it's Book of Lives, a memoir of sorts by Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood is probably, if not the, Canada's most celebrated writers. This is her first memoir, and she recounts her early life with her parents. And they spent most of the year in the forest in northern Quebec, very much off the grid. And then her rise to literary stardom and the defining cultural and political moments that have shaped her writing and her life. So since I have read almost everything that she has ever written, I want to say I have read at least 95 to 98% of it, and there's a lot. She has written a lot. I am interested in making connections from her real life to her art, which I did try to do when I was doing the Mondays with Margaret videos. I'm doing that series. I will link the playlist below. But I'm also interested in seeing, what else we will learn about Margaret Atwood that she hasn't already revealed in some way. So this book is out on November the 4th. This next book is also out on November 4th, and I love the play on words in the title. This is called Hide and Seek, Letters from a Life in Brown Skin by Sunny Dillon, who is originally from Vancouver, but now lives in Ontario. Sunny Dillon was also a Globe and Mail journalist who made headlines after leaving the newspaper and publishing a viral essay about the challenges faced by journalists of color. This memoir is told through a series of letters to his daughter. The book traces Dillon's experiences growing up in Canada, and it offers reflections on identity, race, and resilience. This kind of gives me David Cherry-Andi vibes in his book, I've Been Meaning to Tell You, which was a letter written to his daughter as well. So it seems like a similar idea here. Okay, this next category of books are books that are on my radar. So I haven't exactly made a decision on these books yet, but I'm definitely aware of them, and I look forward to hearing more about them and what others have to say with regard to what they think about them. So first up is Against the Grain by Terry O'Reilly, who has been the host of CBC Radio's Under the Influence since 2005. So this book shares the stories of individuals who challenged the status quo, defied convention, and pushed for change, and often at great personal cost to them. Some were celebrated for their efforts, and others not so much. They had to basically fight every step of the way to make their mark. So this book does seem to be totally my kind of book. And Terry O'Reilly is coming to WordFest, the WordFest Festival in October. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it from him. And we'll see. I might pick it up. It will be published on October the 14th. Next is Fan Mail by Jason Gurriel, who is a Toronto-based author. In this book, he draws on his own experiences and explores why we become fans and how fandom has shifted. That I totally agree with this, that it has shifted from the offline world to the digital age. He reveals that fandom is a vital part of artistic life. I thought that was interesting. Shaping us in profound ways, both for the better and for worse. And this will be out on September the 25th. I have definitely seen a shift in what being a fan is like in my lifetime. Next up is Bloom by Nicole Bryant, who lives in Gibsons, BC, and Claire Sicherman, who is a trauma-informed somatic writing coach. For over 2.5 years, the pair exchanged letters reflecting on their experiences growing up in the suburbs of late 1980s Vancouver. These letters form Bloom, which is a memoir that explores the awkwardness and confusion of adolescence through the lens of middle age, examining how societal expectations shaped by patriarchy and misogyny informed their identities. This will be out on September the 26th. Next is an author that I have read before. This is Enshittification by Cory Doctorow, who is a Toronto-born author now living in Burbank. In this book, Doctorow explains why he coined the term, and he uses it to diagnose the current state of our digital world, revealing how it's steadily worsening and negatively impacting all of our lives. This will be out on October the 7th. Next is Cruising the Downtown, edited by Christopher Wells, who is an educator and senator representing Alberta. This book shares the history of Edmonton's LGBTQIA2S+ community and builds on the work of the Edmonton Queer History Project. It celebrates the people, the places, and the events that have shaped and continue to shape the city's queer past and present. And this will be out on October the 15th. Next up, this might be the most Canadian book on the list. I'm just saying that from the title. It's called Maple Syrup by journalist Peter Kutenbrouwer. This book explores the history and cultural significance of one of Canada's most cherished traditions. I like maple syrup, but I don't know that I'm that much into it. But anyway, it delves into the Indigenous heritage of maple syrup, its enduring place in Canadian identity, and the complex industry that supports its production today. So learn more about maple syrup on October 21st when the book comes out. Coming on November 4th is The Finest Hotel in Kabul by journalist Lise Doucette. This tells the story of modern Afghanistan through the lens of the Intercontinental Kabul, the country's first luxury hotel, which opened in 1969, and the lives of the people who have worked within its walls. Also coming out on November the 4th is The Smiling Land by Alan Doyle. Alan Doyle is from Newfoundland, and who you probably know, especially if you're Canadian, you will know from the band Great Big Sea. He has written a number of books. I still have not read any of them, so I might have to change that with this one. But in this, he offers insider tips and offbeat travel advice on the best places to visit along Newfoundland's windswept coastline, from historic lighthouses to ancient Viking and Basque fishing villages and settlements. Newfoundland is beautiful. So he also shares the best spots to see dolphins and puffins in the wild. Newfoundland, if you haven't had a chance, it's definitely worth visiting. So staying with books coming out on November the 4th, there are a few of them here. The Science of Pets by Jay Ingram, who is a Victoria-based writer. You all know I have 2 pets, so I might pick this up. But this book looks at the behaviors of the animals that we call our own, and it explores common myths and misconceptions, and it delves into questions such as why baby animals are so irresistibly cute, what's driving the rise of exotic pets like tigers and bears, and I did not know that was happening, but whether highly intelligent creatures like octopi could make suitable companions. This might be interesting. Another book that will be out on November the 4th is Black Loyalist by Ruth Holmes Whitehead, who lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And Black Loyalist tells the story of more than 3,000 formerly enslaved men and women who escaped bondage during the American Revolution by siding with the British. Over 2,700 of them eventually made their way to Nova Scotia. The book follows their journey from the newly formed United States to the shores of Nova Scotia, where they pursued freedom, dignity, and a fresh start. The final book in this category is The Work of Our Hands by Adrian Sutherland, who is a Cree musician from Attawapiskat, Ontario. And in this book, he reveals why he chooses to live in a community The community that is often seen by outsiders only through poverty and despair. Through his personal experiences, he offers a deeper, more intimate perspective that goes beyond what outsiders can see. And for this book, we have to wait until the end of the year, as it will be published on December the 30th. And now for the final category. These are my most anticipated books from the list. There's a lot here. So first up is How to Breathe Water by Sharon Butala, who is a Saskatchewan-based author. I've only read one other book by her a long time ago, but this book is about a road trip from Calgary to Winnipeg, which isn't too far, maybe 13 hours. It is a journey, though, through a difficult childhood, long-buried traumas, and complex yet meaningful relationships. Along the way, she visits places of Indigenous history and locations where her ancestors once struggled to build a life, weaving together memory and landscape as she reflects on how the places and moments we pass through shape who we become. Sharon Butala is also one of the authors coming to WordFest, so I'm really looking forward to hearing her talk more about this book. Next is another memoir of healing, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, Kihiani by Susan Aglukark and Andria Warner. Susan Aglukark is an incredibly talented Inuk musician. And in this book, she shares her humble beginnings growing up with 6 siblings in a predominantly Inuit community on the western shores of Hudson's Bay. After a life-altering event at age 8, she embarks on a long journey of healing, a path that ultimately led her to becoming a celebrated singer. I definitely want to read that one. Next is a book that I'm actually currently reading, and it is 21 Things You Need to Know About Indigenous Self-Government. And this is by Bob Joseph, who is a member of the Gwawanuk Nation in BC. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I've read his book, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, and this is in some ways a follow-up to that. Because it exposes the lasting repercussions of the Indian Act and explores the path that Indigenous peoples can take to reclaim self-government, self-determination, and self-reliance. So I should be finishing this in the next day or so. Next up is Bad Indians Book Club by Patty Krowek, who is of Anishinaabe and Ukrainian descent, and is also a member of the Lac Seul First Nation in Treaty 3 territory and lives in Niagara Falls. This book draws on conversations with writers and readers who identify as bad Indians. What is meant by that? Those are people who reject the dominant European settler narrative. And together they reflect on how stories by and about marginalized voices can help us imagine new possibilities for identity and ways of being. I am really interested in this book, and I'm sure I'll be reading it soon. Up next is another author who will be coming to WordFest in October. Walking with Beth by Marilyn Simmons, who is from Kingston, Ontario. This reflects on the wisdom that she gained from her friend Beth, who was a vibrant woman who worked independently until the age of 99. And the book shares rarely told stories of older women's lives and offers valuable insights on how to sustain a long and meaningful life. This will be out this week on September the 23rd. Next is Soundtrack by Michael V. Smith, who lives in Kelowna, BC. And this is a poetic memoir. I've talked about it a couple of times on my channel already, but it reflects on growing up gay under the shadow of AIDS and it uses songs and albums to capture the last 3 decades of the millennium. He explores social prejudice, court rulings, medical breakthroughs, and personal moments of loss, joy, love, and community. This is going to be published on September the 30th. Also out on September 30th is Precarious by Marcello Di Cintillo, who is a writer here in Calgary. I've read his book on taxi drivers, and I'm really interested in this one just because of the topic. So Precarious examines the harsh realities faced by migrant workers who come to Canada, and it reveals the exploitation, abuse, and dangerous conditions that they endure under the temporary foreign worker program. Marcello Di Cintillo investigates the system's deep flaws and questions whether a system that relies on the vulnerability of its most marginalized can ever be made more just. So I think this is an important book. Next is John Candy by Paul Myers. Paul Myers, some of you may know, is a Canadian writer and musician. You may also know his brother, Mike Myers. He currently lives in California, but this is an in-depth look at the life of John Candy, who, I love. It reveals how Candy navigated the highs and the lows of fame with warmth, generosity, and an unmistakable charm. So this is going to be out on October 7th, and actually both Marcello Di Cintillo, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, and Paul Myers are authors who will be at WordFest, so that's exciting too. Also out on October 7th is Vanished Beyond the Map by Adam Schultz, who is a Canadian explorer. I've talked about him before on my channel as well. And in this book, Adam retraces the footsteps of explorer Hubert Darrell, who mysteriously disappeared in November of 1910 in the remote wilds of the Northwest Territories. He was once considered the most capable and resilient explorer of his time, and Darrell left behind a trail of letters, journals, and hand-drawn maps. So Schultz uses these clues and sets out to uncover what really happened to him and where Darrell may have gone. It sounds great if you're looking for an adventure story. I might be picking this up. Next is a collection of stories called Elbows Up. This is edited by Eliman Abdelmahmoud, who is the host of CBC's radio's Commotion. These stories are responses from Canadians to the shocking annexation threats that were made by the US president, determined to make Canada the 51st state, and the wave of Canadian national unity that basically came out of that in response. This will be out on October 14th, and Eliman, along with some of the writers in the book, will also be at WordFest. So I will be talking more about this, I am sure. The final nonfiction book is a debut called We Survived the Night. This is a book by Julian Brave Noise Cat. He is a member of the Canam Lake Band in BC and a descendant of Lilwat Nation of Mount Currie. He reflects on his upbringing as the son of a Secwepemc father and a white Jewish Irish mother. Though he became a competitive powwow dancer, he often felt like an outsider on his own reserve, on his home reserve, having been raised mostly by his mother. And in his 20s, Noise Cat's pursuit of his father's story became a path to uncovering and sharing the stories of other First Peoples across North America, challenging their erasure, invisibility, and misrepresentation. This will be available on October the 14th, and I'm hoping to see him at some point. So these are 45 nonfiction books to read this fall. Are there any books that interest you or that you have maybe even already read? Please let me know what nonfiction books you are hoping to read before the end of 2025. And are you participating in Nonfiction November? I will leave links below to the fiction books CBC put out as well. There's also other links that I mentioned, so check those out below. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.